Hey, it's Nate from Optimal Health Personal Training. I want to talk briefly about a post one of our community members made in our private Facebook group this morning. In the post, she mentions that recently people have been making comments on and offering advice to not get too big or don't get too bulky, don't get too muscular. Um, One of these people even said that he doesn't like to stand next to her because her arms are bigger than his. um, I wish I didn't laugh. And I wish this wasn't an isolated incident. In the past, I've had clients come to me questioning their actions and lifestyle choices because someone said they looked a little bit masculine, looked like a boy. Look, straight up, if you tell a woman who strength trains to not get too muscular or don't get too big, you deserve a round of applause because guess what? You've just ousted yourself as someone who is totally ignorant, bit of a douche, and you probably don't even lift yourself. There are many reasons why both men and women should incorporate regular, structured exercise into their lifestyles, while also prioritizing a wide range of nutritious foods over the alternative, energy-dense, nutrient-depleted foods. But first, I want to share with you a couple of statistics relative to Australia on why taking care of yourself is probably a good idea. So here we go. In 2014 and 15. Over 63% of Australian adults were considered overweight or obese. That's almost two out of every three adults in Australia. This is an increase compared to 1995, which back then it was 56.3%. A gender breakdown shows men have slightly more reason for concern, with over 70% of adult males being overweight or obese, compared to 56.3% of females. Evidence also shows that we're passing on our bad habits to our kids as well. 27.4%, or around 1 in every 4 children aged between 5 and 17 years, were considered overweight or obese. When it comes to our diets, 49.8, nearly 1 in every 2 adults, meet the Australian dietary guidelines for the recommended servings of fruit. However, only 7% meet the guidelines for servings of vegetables. So that means 93% of Australians aren't getting enough vegetables into their diets every single day. 68.1%, or nearly 7 in every 10 children aged between 2 and 18 years, meet the guidelines for recommended daily servings of fruit, while 5.4% meet the guidelines for servings of vegetables. That means 95% of Australian children aren't getting enough vegetables into their diets every single day. Good news, 5.1%, or about 1 in 20 of both adults and children are meeting the guidelines for fruit and vegetables. So good on you if you're that 5%. Look, speaking of the guidelines, there's over 55,000 peer-reviewed scientific research papers that are in support of the guidelines. That's a whole lot of scientific evidence. The guidelines recommend that we eat a wide variety of nutritious foods from the 5 food groups: fruit, vegetables, low-fat dairy, lean meats, or protein alternatives such as eggs, nuts, seeds, tofu, as well as whole grains. Going paleo or fasting for a couple of days a week, or adding lashings of butter to coffee, or consuming bucket loads of fat, excluding whole food groups or avoiding fructose, carbs, gluten, they're actually not included in the guidelines. Funny that. As for exercise, we're fairly divided as a nation when it comes to that. 55%, just over 55% of 18 to 64-year-olds participate in sufficient physical activity, which is defined as more than 150 minutes of moderate physical activity or more than 75 minutes of vigorous physical activity a week, or an equivalent combination of both. And that includes walking. Those numbers include walking as well. Nearly 1/3 do not complete enough training to be classified as sufficient, while only 14.8, well not only, and 14.8% do nothing at all. 68.7% females were sedentary or engaged in low levels of exercise. The 15 to 17-year-old female bracket, 56.7%. So my question is this: why do people think it's appropriate to tell anyone else what they can and cannot do with their bodies in the first place, especially women in the strength and conditioning realm? What makes someone think it's perfectly acceptable to tell a woman don't get too muscular? Do those same people also go around telling all the men don't get too thin? I hear far more times, way more times, don't get too muscular or you look like a man compared to don't get too thin. And if you're going to compare these two bits of unsolicited advice side by side, it doesn't really take a genius to figure out which one of these is more messed up. We should be doing a better job of promoting and encouraging regular exercise, people to lead optimally healthy lifestyles. I want people to seek out and be an active part of supportive and like-minded communities, rather than leading sedentary lifestyles, self-loathing, and the tall poppy syndrome of pulling people down to make oneself feel better about their own circumstances. Now, I'll tell you who does a really good job at that: CrossFit. Now, personally, I'm not an advocate of CrossFit, and they've received their fair share of criticism, some of it justifiable. However, the one thing that they have done better than anyone else is that they have encouraged more women to get involved and participate in weight training and weightlifting. And that's a good thing. So what's my opinion on what our community member posted this morning? Look, she's put in the work and she's achieving her goals. In doing so, she held up a mirror in front of her colleague, and that mirror started projecting their own insecurities back onto themselves. So it was a reflection of what they were saying. It's a reflection of how they feel about themselves. Look, I'm going out on a limb here. I do not speak on behalf of this person. I've never met them. But if they've got goals, like for someone to say something like that, they might have some health and fitness goals, or they might not. But if they did, I'm pretty certain they know what's required to achieve those goals, but they're not prepared to put in the work. And look, it's a lot easier to pull someone down to justify the lack of results that you have from the lack of work that you've done, thereby making yourself feel a little bit better about yourself, than it is to lift up others, and therefore yourself, lift others up to greater successes in life. I actually saw a quote this morning from another fitness professional, which I thought was very relative to what I'm talking about now. He quoted Heraclitus, who is one of the great pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. And the quote is, "Dogs bark at what they cannot understand." People don't like change. In fact, doing new things for yourself forces change and discomfort on other people. So you know what? Let the dogs bark. Let it go and keep going. Keep doing your thing. We are more than our bodies. We aren't put here on earth to be aesthetically pleasing to others. People's choices are their own. They might want to lift weights to challenge themselves in ways outside the physical. I don't know about you, but have you ever stepped up to a bar loaded with double your body weight on it, and you've caught yourself thinking, how am I going to lift this off the ground? Questions will be asked from a mental aspect of what you're made of. Look, in my client's case, what drives her and what brings her to the gym and what gets her to put in, what encourages her to put in the most amount of effort and her level of effort is she wants to push herself further every single time. She wants to leave the gym knowing that she's just that little bit better each and every time. She wants to get physically and mentally stronger. And you know what, probably the most important thing, well, I think it is for her, I know it is for her actually, because she's told me, is she wants to encourage those close to her and those around her, especially her 3 daughters. She wants to encourage people to lead healthy lives and wants everyone to know that, hey, looking after yourself is actually pretty sexy and cool. So to anyone out there, here's my thing, to anyone out there who feels obliged to give advice unsolicited, or share tips or offer tips to other people on what they should look like, how they should act, how they should feel, how they should live their lives, because it might fall outside or challenge your window of reality. I want you to mind your own business. Thanks.